The number one thing I wish I knew, what nobody is telling you about long distance riding, is that comfort isn't a luxury, it's survival. If you're uncomfortable by day 1, you're going to be miserable by day 5. So on this most recent trip I did, Route 66 from start to finish, 2,500 miles, and I was on a 1-cylinder 250cc. Top speed I could ever get it at was 61 miles per hour. So I'm thinking Route 66 speed limit is probably gonna be like 45, maybe 50 miles per hour. Because I'm not going on the highway, right? Wrong. You cannot cross the US without hitting roads where your only option is 75 miles per hour speed limit. So people are going 90, including many semis. I'm on a little light bike. Some of the roads are very rough, and without rear suspension, no heated grips, no heated seats, no traction control, no cruise control. I was in physical pain every day for 2 weeks. Not to mention the possible road rage you might get from other drivers if they're stuck behind a very slow car. Luckily, on this road trip, first time on any of my solo road trips, I had a follow van, so they could at least stay behind me for most of the way, put their hazards on when the only option was a 75 mile per hour speed limit road. Okay, and the next thing about long distance riding is, does anyone else hate interstate riding? So my last road trip took double the time it would have taken if I had stuck to the interstate and maybe just hit Route 66 towns. But it ended up being worth it, and here's why. Don't chase the miles, chase the experiences. Trying to crush miles. At the end of the day, when I was doing a mile heavy day, and that was the focus, I just felt drained and exhausted and bored. Like riding didn't feel like a fun thing to do. But on the days where I was going through the towns and I wasn't at high speeds, I wasn't crushing a lot of miles, those were some of the coolest days and the coolest experiences. Finding the most beautiful scenery. That looks like the tree right out of Avatar. The mother tree. Oh my gosh. And some of the prettiest roads. And if it wasn't for getting off the interstate, I would not have seen or had those experiences. When you're on the interstate, you see billboards, you see logos for franchises. It's like just about all you see are ads and marketing for companies. But when you get off of it, that's when the coolest experiences, things happen. Finding the cool old Americana towns and going inside to the shops. And one of the coolest things that will never happen on the interstate is seeing wild donkeys and dogs roaming around and horses. I'm like, what is my life right now? And that does not happen on the interstate. And at the end of the day like that, you come back out of riding, you're like, man, that was fun. Can't wait to do it again. The next thing is that, I guess, to me, it's just comes more naturally to me, but a lot of you ask about riding solo. It sounds like some people think that riding solo is a skill. I think we're just so used to being around people that some of us have forgotten what it's like to be alone in our own thoughts. It's like you don't know what to do with yourself, and you're not sure if you can take care of yourself or entertain yourself. You feel like you'll be lonely or bored, or you don't want to be alone with your own thoughts. Maybe you have something very stressful that you're dealing with that's in the back of your mind that you don't want to think about, and the distraction of work or family keeps you distracted from that. And if you're alone, you're forced to think about it. When was the last time you got to just listen to a full podcast or an entire audiobook or just some music? Yes, you can overthink and dwell on things you might not want to, but just kind of try to push yourself to thinking about something that you do want to think about, you do want to think through. But for me, It was audiobooks. Audiobooks saved my last road trip. It was just, it felt so good to just be able to listen to a story being told while I was on the road. The next thing I wish I knew earlier is how much weather can humble you.
I am so over this.
And take out the wind of your sails. Take out that motivation, that I can do anything attitude you might have before you start. Especially with how vast and diverse the terrain and weather is in the US. Across just 1 week, you can go through just about all the weather. In the 2 weeks on Route 66, I experienced torrential downpour, high winds moving me all across the lane, cold mornings where I needed all my heated gear, and hot days where I was sweating and had to pull over every half hour just to cool off. I did the coast to coast one in April, and temperature-wise, that's great. But I do not recommend that for lower half of US because the crosswinds, once you start getting to the middle west of US, can be so dangerous. You will get public advisory alerts on your phone.
Southwest winds 40 to 45 with gusts up to 70 expected.
Winds are so bad they will literally blow you over across the road, and you can crash easily, especially around Tornado Alley. So that panhandle of Texas, winds are going there pretty much year round. I had to stop on my first cross country trip because I physically could not ride through it. I was riding straight and my bike was like this. And I hunkered down in the hotel for the night, and the next day I saw semis toppled over. This most recent trip from the start of Route 66 to the end, I did in October. And I went through that same area, Tornado Alley, the spot with the highest winds in the US. So I was very nervous, but in October, the winds are way died down. So it was windy, it was moving the bike around, but it wasn't moving me across lanes. It was moving me still within the lane. So I just kept going. October, I feel like, was really great. I did it from October 13th to the 29th. There were chilly mornings, but mostly the days were pretty mild. And as long as I didn't spend the night in any high elevation spots, once you get to Arizona and New Mexico, just be careful where you're spending the night, because maybe that evening or morning may be very, very cold. But I did a lot of whining particularly on the very, very hot day.
It is 89 degrees, high of 92 in California. It is never this hot here. Today, of all days, why California? Why are you in the 90s? Oh my gosh.
But also a full day of rain can be really beat down on your riding spirit. I was so irritated that day, just wanted it to be over. And you can have all the rainproof gear, and if you're in the rain long enough and it's coming down hard enough, eventually water's gonna seep in and get your stuff wet. The next thing you need to know is that what you take on your trip can make the total difference between comfort, convenience, and safety. So one of the most common causes of accidents is failure to see the rider. You don't want to be someone's "I didn't see them" excuse. Yeah, it can be cool to be wearing all black and look like a ninja, but it can also be dangerous. If you must wear Lily, if you must wear all black. Lily, I'm recording a video. So if you must wear all black, at least wear things with maybe a bright color accent, or at the very least. Now, this is one of the most common questions I get, both on the road and in videos. Well, not so much in videos anymore because I've been talking about it so much. The question is, what is that light on the back of your helmet? So you'd see me wearing this in videos, and it's a light that flashes when you're stopping or slowing down wire-free. It's just one way to be visible on the road. And see, sorry, that's my dog growling. We're just gonna ignore her. She keeps doing it. So see this bracket, Lily! So see this bracket on the back of my helmet? You can mount it across different helmets, so you can have one on different helmets. I've got a white one because I'm an overachiever and I want a white helmet, but you can also get this in black. It charges super fast and the charge lasts all day and probably more. I don't know, I charge everything when I'm on a road trip at the end of each night. Especially in the fall, spring, winter, when days are shorter. It's just, you just want that extra lighting. I'm sure if any of you commute on your bike, you're probably commuting in the dark these days. So that's just something else you can do. Another accessory I cannot live without when doing long distance is some kind of a calm system. Sure, when commuting, I just wanted silence, but long distance, I already kind of have my introvert fix in because I'm solo, not like staying in an office all day, listening to people talk when you're trying to work. So on this most recent trip, I used the Sena 60S. So I used it to listen to directions, an entire book on the Route 66 trip. Shout out Sarah Maas Throne of Glass book number 7. And it also has a voice command, which is nice because I can never remember the buttons. And sometimes, especially if you have the heated gloves on or thick gloves on, that can help a lot. But the voice commands did not really work once I was at higher speeds. So just heads up about that. Another thing is, especially when you're going across the US, there are a lot of dead zones. So you will have no signal and there's nobody around for tens of miles. So having some kind of GPS tracker in case you go down and there ain't nobody around and you have no signal. I use a Zoleo, so if you push this button right here, it will call you. They can also connect you to a medical assistance hotline. So say help is on the way, but you need some kind of first aid right now and you don't know what to do. You can talk to a medical assistant on the line. And I know some of you say like, well, your iPhone has satellite emergency, whatever, but it's nice to not have to rely on your phone, especially with a battery that doesn't last as long, that's way less hardy than this. And the satellite connection I hear doesn't work that well. Like you have to get it like perfectly lined up to a super open sky. And this is just a dedicated satellite communication device is just gonna be better at that. And here's where your gear can make the difference between some kind of very bad injury or a not as bad injury, but maybe still an injury. If you watched a video I did several videos ago about the problems with our helmets, in there, my friend Becky talked about her accident. So if you ever heard me talk about how I knew someone who got in an accident and her glasses shattered and a piece of it got lodged in her skull, that happened to Becky. So I don't think that would have happened if she had been wearing shatterproof glasses. All the sunglasses and glasses you've seen me wearing, at least pretty much since my first cross-country trip 2 years ago, they've all been shatterproof. They've all been from Flying Eyes. Not only is the temple super thin, make it super comfortable in a helmet, you can get it in prescription or non-prescription, polarized or not polarized if that's what you prefer, but they come in all different kinds of styles. I also have the aviators in black and in this copper color, but I can't tell you how many times I've tried taking my helmet off and still wearing these because I just forget that they're on because they're so comfortable. So make sure you have something shatterproof on your eyes when you're riding as well. That's not something people think about, but you gonna need it. And another thing, if you're using navigation, say you're using your phone for it, or you're just listening to audiobook, I kept my phone on my handlebars on this Route 66 trip the entire time, except the one day where I had torrential downpour. And that's because I was using this navigation app where the voice turn by turn was so bad, I could not hear it. I had to look at it. But the last time I had my phone mounted on handlebars, I got a cheap mount off of Amazon and it destroyed the lens in my camera. So I couldn't take pictures or videos, and I mean, most of my videos y'all are watching are filmed on my phone. So I kind of need that. So this trip tested on a 1-cylinder bike across 2,500 miles with Route 66. Not a lot of those roads are smooth, by the way. And my phone still survived. And that is the Peak Design phone mount. It has a vibration dampener in it. And I also use the one where you can charge your phone wirelessly in it. So you can mount it on your handlebars or you can mount it across all different parts of your bike. But that's the one I use, that's my favorite spot. So I'm gonna link to all these things below. And I may have some discount codes. Some of them may be on sale right now for the holidays. So if you ever wanted to get yourself some accessories, now is a good time to do it. And as you're packing for these road trips, and if you're getting overwhelmed about what to get, I've created a free road trip checklist for you. It's what I use every time I pack, if I remember to pull it out. So I'll link to that down below. You'll just submit your email and you'll get an automatic email sending you the checklist. Now, here's another thing you really need to know. Your energy tank may be bigger than your gas tank at first, but later in the day and later in the trip, it can be way less. So here's what I mean by that. Pretty much every day for 2 weeks on Route 66, I started the day with a sore body. After my crash, I avoided pain pills as much as possible because I was kind of scared of getting addicted to them. I don't know if that's a thing with things like Tylenol, Advil, or Aleve, but this trip I took them every day. And I found that Aleve is way more effective than Advil or Tylenol at diminishing pain. When I first started the trip, and usually in the earlier part of the day, I could go much longer stretches. On the Halcyon 250, I could go maybe about an hour and a half, 2 hours before my body really needed to stretch. But towards the end of the day or later in the trip, an hour on the bike was pushing it. I just had like pain abundance overflowing from the day before, and it was like an overlapping effect, even with pain pills. And Epsom salt baths. I actually did take some baths while on the trip. Put that in the follow van. But something that can really help your energy tank and your body as far as pain goes is stopping. Like, you may want to power through and feel like you can just want to crush as many miles as possible. But if you do that, you will be in more pain at the end of each day. If you make it a point to stop every hour and a half at least and just stretch, walk, have a snack, go to the bathroom, do some squats, do some high knees, your body is gonna feel way better at the end of the day. Just remember that you can run out of focus before you run out of fuel. So one of my biggest fears going into this road trip was anything that was reminiscent or a factor contributing to my crash. Let me tell you, I was hyper aware of all those things on this road trip, especially at first, until I could overcome those fears and realize that I learned how to handle them. There were some moments where I was just getting so tired during the day that I hit vertically grooved roads and I didn't even notice it was coming. So it wasn't until I was on it that I noticed. But that also kind of helped me overcome the fear, because I realized once I was on it, I was like, oh, everything's fine. I'm not in a death wobble crashing. Something that can also really help your fatigue is eating and drinking a lot. Again, you may want to power through, you may not want to eat, you may not want to drink a lot of water because then you have to go to the bathroom. But if you skip those things, your body will hurt more. You will be more tired. Now, I didn't want to spend all this time at a sit-down restaurant when I need to crush miles. So I'd just bring some high-calorie protein bars, and just adding one extra of those bars a day than my normal amount of meals I usually eat was the difference between me feeling I was gonna pass out at 7 o'clock at night, or still trucking, full of energy, 8 o'clock at night. So this next thing that I would have helped if I had known earlier is how expensive these long distance trips can be, especially once you start going into the West Coast and you don't camp. So I have a breakdown of expenses for my cross-country trip 2 years ago, and also Route 66 just last month. Okay, so my first cross-country trip was on the road for 6 weeks. For meals, I spent about $1,685. I DoorDashed, ate at restaurants, but also went to grocery stores. So on average, I spent, only $41 a day back then. And on gas, I spent $1,037. So that was averaging about $27 a day. And on hotels, I didn't go budget. I stayed at kind of mid-tier hotels. Holiday Inn Express was kind of what I stuck to as much as I could. And I spent $8,749 on that. So averaging about $230 a day. Since I spent a bulk of that time on the West Coast, once I finally got there, there's just so much cool stuff to film out there. Things are just more expensive on the West Coast, lodging and gas. And on miscellaneous stuff, so servicing my bike before and after, maybe some museums or other just kind of grocery related stuff I might buy. So all that together was $4,764. So in total, on the 6 weeks of my first cross-country trip, it was $16,236. So thank you for those of you watching, because between sponsors, AdSense, affiliates, and things like Patreon and channel members on YouTube, all that was able to be covered and then some, and that's why I can do this full time. By the way, that software that I'm showing that on, that's a budgeting software I use. My husband is a software engineer who is obsessed with finance and budgeting and used to work in cybersecurity. So I'll link to that down below. We use this both for business and just personal stuff to kind of track our expenses at home too. Apparently I shop more than he does. So for my Route 66 trip, which was 2 weeks long, on gas I spent $289. That's averaging about $20 a day. On meals, I spent $911.92, which is averaging $53 a day. Lodging, I spent $2,806, which was averaging about $138 a night. So in total, including flight changes to Indiana to pick up the bike and from California when Janice took the bike away from me, total for the 2 weeks on Browse 6 was about $4,854. So just keep that in mind if you're budgeting for your upcoming long distance trip. And it wasn't until I did a video about how much YouTube pays me for 1 million views that I got so many comments and emails from you all about wanting more info about how to ride for a living off YouTube. So for those of you who are interested, I've been working on something all year. So be sure to sign up for my email list so you can be notified when it launches. That free road trip checklist I mentioned, that's twofold. You'll also be signed up for emails if you sign up for that. So I plan to share what I'm working on at the start of this year on YouTube. So make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss that. Now, this long distance tip, I wish I knew earlier, because on my first cross-country trip, I wrecked my chain. It had to be completely replaced way before the service interval. And it only had about 10 or 11,000 miles on the chain. Chains can usually last around 20 to 30,000 miles. And it was completely my mistake. And one I haven't and won't make again. Your chain, tools, tires matter a lot more than horsepower when it comes to the long haul. Think of the hare versus tortoise race. It's not how fast you can go, it's what you're doing with each mile and how well you're taking care of things and how well you're being meticulous. So my first cross-country trip, when I wrecked my chain, it was 8,000 miles. I did the first half coast to coast pretty directly, so it was only about 2,700 miles. But on the way back, I stopped at a lot of different places, and that's where I added about 6,000 miles. That entire time, I did not maintain that chain. I just completely forgot about it. So make sure remember our MSF class T-clocks? Make sure to check that on your long distance trip, because you're putting way more miles on your bike every day than you would if you were just commuting to work. So think of 1 day of riding on a long distance trip is the equivalent of like weeks at home, maybe. A well-kept 250 will outlast a neglected 1200cc anytime. And especially if you're going far, long distance, there may be a lot of elevation changes. And in here in the US, a lot of humidity changes. On the East Coast, it could be hot. And then 3 days later, say you're in the center of the US, and in the mornings at elevation, it is very, very cold. So your tire pressure may have been perfect 4 days ago, but now you're gonna need to pump it up. Now, unpopular opinion. A lot of people told me not to do this trip on this bike that I crashed earlier this year. The thing about fear is that it doesn't go away if you address it. It just changes. And you may not even notice you're afraid. I really did not think I was scared of this bike when I went on this trip. I really believed that my crash happened because multiple contributing factors, and that just removing 1, 2, 3, 4 of those factors, I wouldn't have the issue again. But that doesn't mean I wasn't afraid it would happen again. Sometimes the difference between overcoming fear is a little bit of skill and knowledge. And some people will never overcome their fears because the knowledge they have at the moment is telling them that their fear is keeping them safe. But I say, question everything. Are you 100% sure it's keeping you safe? Because if it isn't, you may be missing out on some of the coolest experiences of your life and the biggest natural high you can get, which is overcoming a fear in the middle of a freaking panic attack. I was scared that a death wobble would happen again on this bike. I didn't know I was afraid of that until I hit some of the same factors that contributed to my wreck on the road.
Okay, my name is Carolyn Doodle on a motorcycle, and I am not afraid.
But I also learned what to do in those scenarios. Then I just had to apply it more than once so that my feelings could catch up with my logic, which was, I can do this. I know how to handle this. Treat it like trail riding, lean forward, lift your butt off just a little bit from the seat. Don't ride vertical grooves straight, ride them kind of curving. Sure enough, I hit all those things later in the trip like a boss. I did not care at all. I was like, I got this, I can handle this. I am not afraid anymore. Now that is a adrenaline rush that I highly recommend. The next is do not make your route rigid. Plan your route to a T as much as you can, but let it change. That's why I don't book hotels in advance when I travel. I book them about an hour before I plan to stop. And I stop kind of early. I stop by about 5 o'clock, and I like to get into a hotel by like 6, sometimes even earlier if I can, because that way I can have a nice dinner, because I've just been eating protein bars all day, and I can have a nice nighttime routine, take a bath if I need to, do some stretches if I need to, get prepared for the next day. So I had ChatGPT outline an itinerary for me and towns to stop in and how many miles to do a day, and I told it that I wanted to do more miles at the start and less at the beginning, but once I got into the groove of things, I realized the amount of miles I can do in one day on the Janus Halcyon 250 is what I would do on like an hour and a half, 2 hours on my Tiger or Harley. So I had to adjust some things. Unless you're going to look up the weather and elevation for all the miles and the towns you're going to be going through, it's like 4 different places a day. No, no thanks, too much, way too much. I just try to be prepared, but allow myself to be surprised on a trip. So I didn't know I'd spend one whole day in the rain. I didn't know I would lose my heated gear plug for the 3rd time and have to crush miles so that I wouldn't be riding from a high elevation cold place with no heated gear. I pretty much didn't stick to my itinerary for the entire first week. Probably the first 10 days, actually. So just be prepared for that. And I'd say that the takeaway is that a long distance trip, you may have an ache for riding, especially if you just commute and do some weekends. Like you're always like, you just don't get enough riding. You want more. Well, that riding fix will be satiated on a long distance trip. It will be satiated and overdosed. And you may get to the point where you are sick of the bike and you just want to hunker down in a hotel and stay in bed all day. And actually, I did do that in the middle of the trip. Now that you've got all these great tips, make sure you don't do any of the common road trip mistakes. You're not dumb, just avoid these common mistakes right over here.